Hey everyone, it's Angus here. I thought I would try and work out how to use the new stock screener tool. It's not something that I've looked at all. Like I haven't clicked on it yet. I was very familiar with the previous one, and there's quite a bit of feedback online as to whether the new one's a good replacement for it or not. But I thought I'd have a quick go at it and stumble my way through, so you can see my thinking process just for the fun of it. I think what I'll try and do before I start to play with it, I'll decide on my strategy. And so what I want to do is I like to look for stocks where the MACD line is crossing up through the signal line. It gives me a good indication that there might be strength coming back into the stock, and the trend might be reversing direction back to the upside. And the lower that cross happens on the MACD, potentially the more value there is. So normally I like to wait for a cross below the signal line, but just for fun, or below the zero line on the MACD indicator. And I'll show you all this coming up. But what I'll try and do this time around is I might try and incorporate the RSI as well, and try and find stocks where that crossover is happening, but sort it by the RSI as opposed to filtering out only those crossing below that zero line. Anyway, so let's have a go at this and see if this works. Right, so I've got my Bitcoin chart here. Nothing on it, it's very blank. Normally what we used to be able to do was click on this crypto pairs screen and we'd be able to shoot through and look at all the different filters for the stocks. But I want to do it this time around for stocks and for crypto. Stocks and crypto and everything else was in that drop down. This time around, let's try and look at it for stocks. So let's start off with a stock like NVIDIA. And let's get rid of the crypto pairs screener. And now what we have to do with the new version of the stock screener is we've got this little symbol over here called screeners. So I'm going to click on that. And it's got market US, watch list index price. So it's already got something in there. I'm going to see if I can go to a default version. Let's have a quick look. How do I clear anything that's in there? Custom. So let's make this a bit bigger for now. What if I click on that? So it changes it over there. If I click on that, it changes it over there. Okay, so that's all right. Now, I want to start from scratch. So move overlay to split view. Screener settings, that's probably a good thing. So it looks like I can get rid of all these current filters. I don't like that it covers up the little X, so I can't sort of get to the thing I want to get to. See how there's that X reset? Let's get rid of that. So I think I've now got it without any filters. That's saying 11,260. Let's see if I can do it for multiple markets. So if I go more markets, multi-select, I'll turn on multi-select. So I've got US, and I like to trade a couple of different markets. I'm going to add Australia. So I've got, that's just this, this Angus is just a, just an existing one. So how do I go make a copy, rename, create new screener? So don't save. And so I'm going to call this one Bollinger Cross. I'm going to go create. And so I can see that I've got 13,000 stocks, so nothing's being filtered. So what I want to do is start to look for that MACD cross. So I've got market US, watch list index price change, market cap PE. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff up there that I don't really want. I'd love to get rid of all of them. Remove all filters, that's good. Right, so I've got watch list, and so let's go add filter. And so let's just type in MACD, moving average convergence divergence. And so it's saying that's the standard settings day candle level. Let's go add filter. Now I want to be able to do stuff with that MACD. So I want to be able to go, these are things that are built in. So level 0 and above, level crosses up 0, level crosses up signal. So I like that one, I think. Level crosses down signal, level crosses down 0, level 0 and below, And let's have a look at manual setup. And so this is a bit how you used to be able to do it on the old one. So I'm pretty sure that what I want is this level crosses up through the signal line. And so let's have a quick look. So so we've got 471 stocks that are doing that cross. Now I want to be able to make this chart here bigger, and I can't see. Oh, here we go. No, can't drag that. Remember I pressed that split view. So let's move that back over there. Now I need to get my indicators back. So let's click on this one and let's type in MACD. Right, so this will give me back my MACD. So my MACD is down there. And so see how my MACD line, which is this blue line, is crossing up above that orange line. So that means that my indicator is correct, like it's showing me the right thing. So that's interesting. That's not too bad. Now, I'm on a laptop screen, so I think if you had a desktop monitor in the past, it was easier when you had these crypto pairs, but it meant that when I was using it on my laptop, often it would shrink my graph, and if I had a couple of these indicators down the bottom, it was quite difficult to use. So I've got, let's call this my watch list. So I'm going to go and create a new watch list. So let's go create new layout. Not really. ASX, create new list. So let's call this one MACD. And so let's go save. I'll shrink him back down. I'm trying to shrink that one just so it's a bit flatter, so I can have a bit more. Actually put it over a year so I can see it over 1 year. I might move this up a little bit just so we can see him a bit better. Let's go 1 year, double click. So that's Johnson & Johnson from roughly June last year to June this year, and that's the top one that's showing that crossover. So when I can see this crossover a fair way down below the line, that to me means it's at like a better value area, because you can see it's gone all the way up there and it's pulled back, so that's quite a good run. But you can see that when it sort of gets to around this level here, it also pulls back. And so I like the idea that when it's down here, see it's down this level here, that's when it's been turning around in the past. And so what I'll often do is I'll often look back and see just if there's a common area. Like I always think about these things, they should be, per stock is what you look at. You don't sort of just apply a general rule. So, looking at this, you could say that this is T-Mobile. Why am I on T-Mobile? Well, it doesn't matter, I guess. When it gets up to about here, he pulls back to around about here, where he starts to rally again. So there's quite a range on that. So if I pull in another tool just for interest, I think it might be up under this one. Nope. I want the tool that tells me the price range, this one here. So if I said on this particular, where's my tool? See how it sort of travels. And if I said roughly from there to there, that's an 18% gain. So that's not bad. I'm actually going to copy this. I'm going to go Control C. And let's have a look through some of these. So, that's that one up there. But if I go back and paste my thing here and say, well, from where it is now to that sort of top area, that's a 15% type return. So, if he went all the way back up to his, previous high, that's maybe 15%. This one here, see how it sort of crossed above that line. So to me, it's not quite as good a value. That's crossing below the line, so it means that there's a chance that might go back up to its previous high. I also like to look for things like where a stock's been going up nice and steadily, and all of a sudden it's had a pullback. So that's like 12%. And this is just all, of course, incredibly speculative. This is just me guessing that some of these stocks might turn around based purely on this indicator. So this one here is having a bit of a rough time, Merck & Company. So let's have a look at 1 year. Oh, see, he's just getting destroyed. So I tend to like the ones that have been going up nice and steadily, and they just had a pullback recently. So let's try and add a few more bits and pieces. So some of those ones are okay. Let's give myself more room again. I did kind of like it when it was below. I didn't have to keep sort of moving it open and closed, and I'd like to be able to have the option to make this full screen. I can't see that obviously anywhere here. Like even if I could just pop it full screen temporarily. I don't seem to be able to drag it any wider than that, which is annoying. No. This chart view will be interesting. So let's have a look through my headings. So I'm interested in price, I'm interested in change, I'm interested in volume. So that's another good thing I want to do. So I actually want to make sure that the volume value, I want to make sure that my volume is greater than, let's say 100,000. So column settings maybe. No, that's 1 day. So previously I used to be able to adjust it within here. Bit annoying. So let's go volume. I want to go average volume. 90 days. Add filter. So that's 100,000. So that just sort of gets rid of some of my penny stocks. So I'm down to 126. Let's go to price and let's filter on price. So again, I can't filter on price, which is annoying. Why can't I filter in there? I felt like I used to be able to do that on the previous version. I'll try and right click. No. So I need to add a price filter. Market data, price. I do like the 10 to 100 type stocks, so I do like that that's there. So I'm down to 30 stocks. Now, relative volume is quite good in that you can see the stocks where the volume is surprisingly high, sort of descending. So it's basically got 2.8 times. I think the relative volume is based on the 10-day average volume, and so it's basically saying that at the moment the volume is 2.8 times higher than what it might have been over the previous period of time. So we'll keep that one there. Market cap, don't really care about market cap. I'm going to hide this one. Don't really care about PE. If you're a fundamental investor, you might like the PE there, but I'm not so worried about it. What I want to do is I want to put the RSI in. Just get rid of some of these, remove. And I'm going to say add the RSI, Relative Strength Index. And so it's just rule of thumb, I like buying in that sort of 40 to 60 type sweet spot. The lower this is, the more likely that the stock has perhaps been oversold. So you can see I've got 30 stocks, SRPT. Change on that one was down 15%. Oh, look at that. That's why its RSI is so low. It just got smashed on earnings. So I've got my list of 30 stocks that I want to go through and review. I'd like it if that was bigger and wider. If you've got a full size, big screen monitor, it might be better, but it's not bad. So let's move that all the way back over there. Let's go 1 year. 1 year. So I don't like the look of that. That's just messy. FG, again, messy. Big drop on earnings. I like to have these earnings filters on. You can change that up in your chart configuration up the top somewhere. So again, a bit of a drop on earnings, but see how it's so oversold down here. That previously, when it was that high, it pulled back a long way. It sort of seems to pull back when it's sort of up around there. So, this one here, so WNS, no idea what they do. there's a bit of volume. So here's one that I'd add to my watch list, and let's have a quick look to see. I mean, I know I can hit, I think it's Alt W and it adds to my watch list, so I can go Alt W and say he's there. But I wonder if I can just drag it across. It doesn't support dragging that across. That's a bit of a fail. Technically, I can hit, I think I can right click and go add to watch list. So I could add it that way to my MACD, and then I could add it to multiple ones, but that's, so the easiest thing I do is just go Alt W. So let's hide that for now. So that would be one that I'd watch. Don't know. It's at a sort of support area. Maybe it's broken through. I'd like to sort of watch it, but I just think all the way down there isn't a bad value area, is how I would look at that. TSN, big drop on earnings. Tyson Foods, long way down. Does tend to go a long way back up if he moves. So let's have a look at our tool. So from there to, let's say there, 20% type return. So I'm going to copy this just so I can stick it on the next ones easily. Too much of a long-term down pattern. I don't like that. Roche Holdings, nice run, crossing over. I don't know what they do, but I'm going to hit Alt W and just save him for now. It's basically sat around that area for ages, so it's not likely to do much, I don't think. Southern Cross, let's hide this again to give me a bit more width. That's sort of an area it's always been at, so I'm just really looking for these stocks that might have been oversold and might, head back up. This one's already had quite a big recovery through here, even though, it was still going down, that sort of divergent thing. But it's crossing here. Earnings weren't great, but, it was, at least it was in the green, surprise. The other thing you can do too is, like, the price is currently $12.36. If I go back to here, how am I going to find the, so go back to here. So this is EMBC. If I scroll down, you can see the analyst forecast for most of these. So see how the 1 year price target is $18.50. And so if this one went back up to that $18.50 type mark, so let's say 18.50 is, somewhere around there. The price is currently somewhere around there. So that's a 47% return. So that might be right. So you can see it's obviously been higher in the past. So let's go Alt W and bookmark him. And I won't go through the rest of them, because all I wanted to do was just show you how the new screener might work. And it seems okay. Like it's very similar to the previous version. I did personally, I prefer that the previous version was down the bottom, just because I could see a wider view of all those different filters. Not being able to maximize that, and having to have my graph shrink is not ideal. And then the most important thing is always, don't forget to save the screener. So you get save, and that saves what you've got across the top. And then normally there was something else where you had to save what your filters were. So I wonder if that saved both for me, because that was the biggest pain, where you couldn't, when you went to save it, it didn't save everything. Oh, sorry, the one thing I wanted to do is I want to click on this chart view. So this is interesting. So this is something that I do genuinely like. So rather than fiddling with all that sort of stuff, I could quite quickly go through this. So let's have a very quick look. So I've got auto, chart grid is auto. I'm happy with that. Area chart, let's change it to candles just for fun. It says 5 days. I want to give it a 1 year. Is that 1 year? June to April, June. So downtrend. I prefer going through, looking at them on the better view, where I can see the MACD. So this strategy is really looking for stocks that are oversold, and so that's why I like that MACD. That's why I like that RSI filter. When I go back to my grid here, and I can sort by RSI. I'm not filtering it by RSI, but I can sort it by RSI. And so, anything that's down here, like this Cinemark, where it's, the RSI is on 70, that one to me is not, it doesn't represent great value because, it's already up near where it traditionally returns in the past. Anyway, so that's the look at the new screener. And if you haven't seen it before, hopefully some of that helped. I said there's a lot of feedback online about it, and I don't like. It's not. Said if you had a wider monitor, it could work quite well. But I think that personally, I probably preferred it where it was, unless my memory's wrong, and I used to use the screener a lot, but I like the idea that I used to be able to filter within these columns, not having to sort of do it separately. Like it's almost like a extra step to have to filter things. The other thing that I would add, just while I'm sitting here thinking of adding things, is I like to always have the change over 1 year. So pre-market change, post-market change, price change percent over 1 year. Why can't I do 1 year? It's interesting because I'm looking for stocks that have gone up. Well, that's only over 1 month. I don't want that, but let's say 5% over 1 month. I wonder why I can't do that change over 1 year. Interval is 1 month, but that's just the intervals. I don't want the intervals. So, what did I used to use? Let's have a look under the menu. Let's have a look under price, maybe. It's not what I want. So that's the one that I want there, performance. So over 1 year, I want to find stocks that have gone up by, let's say, 30% or more. Let's see if I can add a column here and go performance. Because what I want to do is I want to try and find stocks that are trending in the right direction. I want to find stocks that are, heading up, overall. There's no point trying to buy one of those stocks that have been plummeting for the last period of time. So let's see what this one is, Pulse. I think that was that one that sort of threw the roof. I do find this all a bit fiddly. So again, maybe he's at a good value area. Maybe he's he's heading in the right direction. I do also like stocks that are in that sub $100 type area, and especially ones that are sub $20. I just have this idea in my head that it's sort of easier for a stock to go from psychologically from $20 to $40 whereas a $200 stock to go from 200 to 400 is always, seems to be a little bit more of a hurdle. So, that could be right, that pulse. But I do like to try and find stocks that are in an uptrend. If he goes from, let's say, this one again, if he goes from where he is now to there, that's 10%. That would seem possible. It sort of seems to trade in that range there, which is 20%. If he went to his all-time high, it's 40%. So who knows? It might be one to keep an eye on. So hit Alt W and add him as well. But anyway, as I said, that's just me having a bit of a look at the new screener and how it works, and it seems very similar to the old one. Obviously, just in a different area. And again, it might be my memory, but I generally thought that I could go into these, see how I can change it here. So see how I can manipulate the values, whereas on this other one, I don't seem to be able to change the values under these, which I think is an extra step that I prefer to not have to have had. Anyway, that's just my initial fumble through, and I appreciate you watching this, but I find that sometimes people learn when they can see someone else's thought process as they're going through something and learning something, as opposed to me just saying, click this, click this, click this, click this, and doing it a bit more rushed. Anyway, hope some of that was useful to you, and if it gives you an idea of perhaps how to find stocks that might be breaking out using something like the MACD, or not so much breaking out but reversing direction, I hope that's useful. And as I said, I like to try and find the ones that have been going up nice and steadily, that have had a pullback, and they start to head up again. If I'd seen this one earlier, I would have perhaps managed to buy in somewhere down here. If I'd run this screener a bit earlier, it's gone up, had a bit of a pullback. Maybe it's going to start going back up again. Who knows? It does seem to like using this area of support, and depending on what the wider market is doing, it's past earnings, so it's past a bit of a risk area for me. And so, I think there could be something to that one, but one to keep an eye on. Thank you very much for listening, as always.